Hey everyone, welcome to an Otherverse hobby hangout. Today I'm going to be painting an Iron Hands Legionnaire and talking about Warhawk. Alright, so this is what I want this model to look like when I'm done. So I started with Abaddon Black airbrushed over the Chaos Black primer, and then I airbrushed from above Corvus Black. Now, Iron Hands Steel I'm going to apply to all of the chrome edges, and this is Mark III armor, so there's a lot of it. It's going to take a little while, so let's do this fast. So, painting an Iron Hand Legionnaire here. This is one of two Iron Hands projects that I have going on. I'm painting an Iron Hand ally. In the Horus Heresy, the lore allows for the legions to kind of hang out with each other. They call it seconding. They get together and they learn from each other. This creates a little camaraderie when the two legions fight alongside each other. This is along their galactic conquest, the crusade they call it. In game turns, this allows me to get a small force from a new army. That really appeals to the collector in me because I want to have all of them. I'm working towards all of the, loyal founding legions eventually. So it allows me to get a little bit, for the heresy game, and to play it alongside my larger army. I have a in-progress Ultramarines army for the 30k. In addition, I've already got a Salamander's Legion started. It's like half done. Next year I plan on a Raven Guard allied detachment force. So when I have all three, I'll be able to put them together and make a new Shattered Legions army. Pretty excited. Now this all kind of relies on the fact that after the new edition that I expect to come out next year, that both the allied detachment rules and the Shattered Legion rules will still exist. Here's hoping that it still does, and I'm going to keep on working on these projects like it does until I know otherwise. The second part of the Iron Hands project is to kind of work on a 40k part. It's primarily Primaris. When I have that done, it's mostly infantry. When the two are combined, I'll have a pretty sizable 40k force, and I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll be exciting. I like the firstborn Marines, especially the 30k ones, because they have a lot of character. Mark III is a great armor variant. It's got a lot of detail on it, lots of rivets and edges. The Forge World specific models are always pretty fantastic. And here I am doing a little touch up, then going back to the Iron Hand Steel. So the Gorgons are pretty great, but the 30k tactical squad from Forge World for the Iron Hands is a lot of character. And on top of that, the Immortal squad is just really awesome looking with the shields, and I bought some Volkite weapons for them to make them very heresy, and they look great. I can't wait to get those painted up. So we're doing some Corvus Black touch-up here. So when I'm painting, I try to work towards the kind of getting it done the quickest way possible, so a lot of planning goes in. The Corvus Black touch-ups will also be working with the Mechanicus Standard Gray as kind of like the touch-up and gradual highlight stage. A lot of people will tell you to paint the whole armor, the largest area of the single color at once, paint it up with the base layer, get it shaded, get it highlighted, and that's all well and good. That works certainly, but I like to take a step out, because once you do the metal edges, once you do the highlight colors and you do the other aspects of the armor, the kind of accent colors and get the eyes in, get the chest details, put the art color on the gun casing, you're bound to screw up something. And then you move on to the touch-up phase. Well, the touch-up phase then moves on to screwing up again, and then touching up the screw up from the touch-up. So I try to shorten that process by doing the highlights at the same time that I'm touching up, because quite frankly they're mostly going to be going over the same areas, and it just reduces 2 steps down to 1. The Heresy models and the kind of multi-use aspect of those, they really appeal to me. It just really hits the collector aspect in me. It's all about that kind of obsessive nerd collector thing that I've got going on. Oh, here we go. So to make my black armor for the Iron Hands a little different than the Raven Guard or the Death Watch that I've got also going on, I'm throwing on some orc flesh in the opposite areas, kind of where the shading would be, to make sure that it's got just a tint of green. I think it's going to look great. Make sure that if you're going to do something similar with a contrast color, you kind of thin it out. So I take a wet brush after I've applied it where I want, and I kind of blend it into the color that's already down there on the model, just to make sure that it doesn't have such a sharp edge. Next, I'm throwing a 50-50 shade of Athonian Camo Shade, there we go, and Nuln Oil to shade the metal. The Athonian Camo Shade gives just a little bit of green aspect to it, and it kind of brings it in with the orc flesh that I put on the kind of Corvus Black to Abaddon Black areas. Gives it just a little hint of color without it being like, whoa, I'm all of a sudden green. Let's get some base and color on. It's amazing how big of a change it makes, how much better it makes the model look like it's half finished. And wait for it. Eventually, I noticed that I put the wrong color on. There we go. And throw the Mephiston red accidentally. Put that away back on the wall. Grab Corn red. Oops. So here we go. Let's get the right color on there. So my painting philosophy is you get the most done as quick as possible. Efficiency through laziness is my philosophy on painting. It's also my philosophy on life. I've got a pretty big pile of miniatures to get painted, and so that's the project. Project plastic to painted. But the problem is I keep on getting more. I swear that buying models is like a hobby on its own. The obsessive collector part of me is always like planning on 3 or 4 projects ahead of time. Don't know why. It's just how my brain works. I'm excited about things that I'm going to do 2 or 3 projects after the one I'm currently, slaving over. So it's, I got to get guys painted. There's just a lot of them sitting around. My pile of shame is fairly decent. I got a video coming about that shortly. And when I say decent, it's kind of scary. The idea is to get as big of a collection as I can of painted models. And I don't want to spend forever on each model. I mean, yeah, I could, dedicate myself to 1 model a month and it would look amazing. But then I would have more guys than I had when the month started, having painted 1 and probably bought 100. So, I'm just here to get the models painted. I want a large collection of painted, tabletop-ready gaming pieces. The bigger the collection, the better. The more of them painted, obviously, the better as well. And so that philosophy kind of works towards just getting them done. But I'm not here for speed painting either. I don't want to be taking shortcuts that kind of sacrifice the look of the model. I don't want to not have it look decent. It's not a showpiece model, that's not what I'm here for, but, at the same time, it's gotta look decent. So Ghost White was introduced to me. It's a Reaper paint. Someone that was at my hobby table said, hey, this is the best white I've ever used. And, not caring for the Citadel whites in any way, shape, or form. I ordered one up. and man, it's been fantastic. So no regrets. Luckily, when I moved all of my GW, paints that go in the wet palette to droppers, it made it easier to have non-GW paints stored along with them. So now I have a wall covered in paint. It was a long process, but it was 100% worth it. No regrets. Threw a few away that were totally dead, bought them again and poured them in the droppers. And now I have a wall with paints. It's great. It's out of the way, and it makes a little more room on the hobby table. So here we go with some basing material. I never used to do bases back in the day. When I started painting miniatures, goblin green bases with crappy green flock was the normal, and I hated it. Hated it so much that I just didn't even do bases. I painted them black again, like the plastic bases they came with. In my teenage years, I said, that's just their shadow. And then I never have to worry about it not matching the table I'm playing on. But, the advances in the technical paints make throwing a base on this model pretty easy. And once that's all done, more of the trouble is waiting for it just to dry than anything. So, yeah. Once this Martian Iron Earth dries, after a nice thick coat, it will fracture a little, which is why I paint the base first, so you can see the color through the cracks. It's also going to take a while to dry, so this is why I would normally do multiple models at once. By the time I'm done 10 of them at once, they're starting to dry, and you don't have to wait quite as long. And here we go. Intermission. Next up, we'll start doing some highlighting. We'll start with the eyes. Put a little dot of moot green in the middle of the warpstone glow. Very carefully. I think that's a 00 Winsor Newton. Doesn't take the most micro paintbrush in the world. It just takes a nice paintbrush that holds a nice edge. Once that's done, I'll also probably throw in a dot of the white scar to make them look even glowier. Glowier, that's a word, right? Let's talk about scars. Well, the white scars. Specifically, the new Warhawk novel. So, minor spoilers. I'm going to assume that you're caught up and that you've read through Mortis, which includes the 54 books of the heresy leading up to that. So the White Scars, they didn't have an awful lot of books in the heresy. Ooh, White Scar, we're going to throw that on the Iron Hands logo. So the White Scars didn't show up in a book until book 28. It's literally after halfway through the series. They had a novella where the Alpha Legion were kind of screwing with them on a planet to make sure that it took them forever to get to their fight. They had the Path of Heaven novel, which was getting back to Terra, doing whatever they needed to rush back to Earth. Before that, I believe they had the short story where a couple of Scars Legionnaires cut off Little Horus's face. So right now we're throwing on some Pigment. Pigment's pretty great. I'm kind of bummed that the Secret Weapon Company went out of business because their pigment is so fantastic. Use a crappy brush for this because it's gonna stay in there for like forever. So Warhawk is a good book. Not a great book though, and I couldn't suggest it to someone who just wants to read it like a Scars fan. At 60 plus books in, there are a lot of characters, there are a lot of story threads, and only a couple of them come to any real conclusion. This is a side effect of something like 1 billion words preceding this book, with 15 years of novels and 30 years of story that they've thought through. But there are a few things we get. We do get to see how the modern Imperium is influenced, a little heavy-handed at times, And we get an explanation of why Warhawk and the Lord of Death are not mentioned in the final battles from all those classic stories from back in the day. So, those threads that are going through, we get All Parson and John Grammaticus, and they have their part in the story. It really feels like they just passed through the book instead of taking part in it. Keeler, the Saint, gets herself into some trouble. We get an Easter egg about why the Imperial cult has an obsession with skulls. Seems a little tacked on, and I feel like the author was literally straight up winking at the reader. We get the story thread of Loken. He takes the opportunity to kill some of his Sons of Horus brethren. Imagine that. He's still angry 50 plus books later. Without giving much away, Sigismund finally gets a chance to be, well, Sigismund. He's really badass. Shows us where the Black Templars come from. I'm not just talking about the name taken from the Brotherhood. I mean the vengeful crusading force that came after the Codex Astartes fractured the Imperial Fist into the separate chapters. The 14th Legion is a pretty big part of it, dealing with the changes from the Buried Dagger book. Doesn't dwell too much on them, but it does give enough time to find that the appreciation of their disgusting and vile gifts is not consistent, and we find out why Mortarion has not referenced in the original stories of the siege. Much like what we learned in Mortis when Perturabo sort of threw a tantrum and left the war behind. You can infer from the cover image that Jagatai is going to have an epic fight with Mortarion. The Lord of Death lives up to his name. I will not go into details here, but I enjoyed the fight between these brothers. Lastly, the book is semi-satisfying at the end. I enjoyed it, but it doesn't have a full ending. We are getting close to the actual ending of the story, and next up is the penultimate book. I have high expectations. There's a lot they have to cover, and I can't wait to get my grubby, paint-covered hands on them. Here's the finished model, guys. Thanks for joining me, and hope to see you soon. Thanks.